hobby for me to do because my hair sucks right now. I need to cut it down to kind of like it's so bald. I really, when I cut it low, it doesn't look so bad, but I'm really not really caring about that right now. Like, it's not like I don't or do. Just the fact that this, why the topic is why does black hair suck or did suck for so long, and why is it now just getting good? Now their answer is processing, rendering, and time. It takes time to do hair. It takes rendering to do hair and time. It costs more time with rendering too. It also takes processing. And so you get like I had a character I made for somebody a long time ago. It was a white character, and she had red hair. I did it, give her red hair and stuff, but she wanted curls. I'm like, oh, you know, this is just like the beginning. ZBrush had just got hair then, and so I'm like, I can only get it done, get a look in ZBrush. I can't get in. I can't get a look in in Maya. So I left her hanging on it because I was trying to figure out how to get it out. It took too long. It's like I was like, man, she wanted curls, and like the process of like ZBrush had like it was you could style it loosely and stuff, but it's to like that was 3 years of school and a break off a little bit after that. So it was like the fifth year. It's like the fifth year of me doing 3D. Like then three of those years was learning. So four I'm still learning, five I'm still learning. Like now I'm like learning new stuff. But and then stuff I didn't learn or anything, there's stuff. You're always learning new things. So the thing with white people's hair, that's that big a difference, and it doesn't. Everything starts out the same. Everybody when it gets hair, it's going out. Let me get the pucks back up here. It goes out. You got a head, and they're all sprouting, and they're all going out. And so right there, at that point, where everybody's the same, it's good. White people, it goes up, it goes down, it goes down, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down, it goes down. It goes the direction where they, might have a part. They might have bangs up here in front, but it's going loosely in all. They're following mostly a direction all the way around. And even mostly on the face, maybe like if it was a male and they got a beard, the beard's probably but they're still basically going down. Eyebrows, eyebrows, and nose hairs like that. Those are normally going to be not to have like I'm not doing like some perfect pick, but like then eyelashes. Those are the common and those are the easy ones. You got some ear hair, you know, for the most part, those are all going the same direction. Out and down, up, out and down, up, out and down, up, out and down direction. So there's a certain flow to it. Black people's hair, it it goes up. Everybody's like everybody else's, but then it wants to go and do this type of deal to it and curl up. And it does this all the way up, and it's stiff or it's springy, it's bouncy. The physics ain't the same. It ain't way down. It kind of bounces. It goes up. We get your eyebrow hair. Then it does the same thing on the face. It's curly. It goes out. But you got eyebrows the same, nose hairs the same. They're all going out. You know, but the beard and the head, unless it's low, just you got to fade, and then you got the wave. That's a it's going like this. You got a wave cap on. You get the wave and lay down. And it's waving on the scalp, and like that's another thing. And then you got your maybe it's faded out on the side, but then you got the beard. It's always unless they wave it up too. I mean, basically, that's what you're getting with black hair. I mean, they can do the same thing with their hair too, but like normally they don't. They'll go do. I mean, if they get something fancy, they got the curls, and the white people do that. The women get curling irons, but unless it's straight or it's curly, those are two easy ways, and those are not too hard with, to make versus make it kind of nap, and then you gotta say, what about split ends? You got some hair's got split ends on them, and like everybody has that. But when it's a black person with split ends, you got split ends. You got to try to make that look real, and like to really go ahead and try to make that look real. Like I said, I can do it. This is time. I say it's hard because it's hard on processing. It's hard on the person doing it because it's like, oh, unless you got some sort of method put together the place. Like I have some braids, like, and that's like the hardest thing to do. Even with hair, even with white people's hair, braids is hard to do just because of the fact that like there's so many strands. You gotta make it look like it's a cluster of strands put together and they're woven together. Then it's not gonna be perfect. You got split ends, you got straggler hairs. It changes as the time goes past. Like it's not always gonna stay tight like that. Some will come loose or break, you know, but still stay in the bunch. There's a whole bunch of different issues that come in with braids. But it also the thing is with it, you have polygons and polygons say this is a well yeah, this is a polygon made up of two triangles, which is this is a polygon. This is a polygon, basically. But that's how it formed. And it don't like processing. It don't like well, it can do it. 'Cause I think of this ingon type shape because then it tries to when the computer's trying to calculate when it's rendering squares. Like that's how everything's done up. And if you look at the trajectory, you think about everything Pythagorean theorem, how math goes, where you got a squared plus b squared equals you can find a leg. So if you have a right triangle, if you go outside right now, you sit here at point A and you mark your steps to point B. and then you mark a point, steps to point C, and this is A. And you mark the steps to point C. You say this is 5, and this is 4, or something like that. Then to get this, it's 5 squared, 4 squared, so it's 5 plus 4 equals C. It's really, then you gotta take the square root of C squared to get this leg right here. So that's the same thing with mapping. That's what mapping. If you look at the latitude, longitude of the Earth, I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's what I'm thinking of. That's how I logically put it to myself. But I mean, there's other things to go in with it because, like, you're looking at it, and you see there's some latitudes or sometimes it's shorter or longer in spots. I think that's just because of time, I guess, to keep time. Because like you got to think about the time markings on the Earth, like when you cross the ocean and the time zones to even that stuff out. But like mostly with a graphics processor is it's rendering and it's trying it's taking these when it gets this it's gonna throw error because it can't. Well, I guess it can do this. It don't like it. More than like it's what they call an end god or something like that. It's not like something that they want. You got to want something even. I guess that's the deal with it. But that's why you see people like you say, oh, you gotta have triangles and like that's how the computer, that's how the graphics card, you know, that's how it calculates everything in the triangles. But like it can triangulate anything. If you give it something a square, it can triangulate it. But like it's not that's what something you see in model, everybody try to get it in squares. You can throw triangles in there, but you really want to throw them in, you want to try to get squares out of it. So like and then you got normal here, you got normal here, you got your normal on the vertices. Those normals that tell how the light's calculated. Tells how each point how to calculate the light. The normal runs by default perpendicular to the plane, and if it's leaning this way, it's shading this side. It's gonna the more it leans towards that direction, the more shade it's gonna put on towards that direction, depending on how it's leaning in like 3 dimensional space. That's why I got normal maps. That's why I got that's how they're able to make these like take all that's the thing that went with you saw a leap in graphics from N64 to like even to the 128 bits, even to the 360 was the normal maps. Being able to take millions of triangles and take their normals, their light, the shading, how to tell the light how to react to to its equal, like basically silhouette and polygons. Take all these normals and tell how to map it across just these few vertices, and that's what your normal do. It tells the lighting how to act. It's almost like it's like a bump map, but the bump map is not really calculating lighting. It's still doing basically the same thing, but it's taking topography. But like you could take a bump map and put it in the elevation, and you can put it what you call well, a bump map's basically also like a heights map. So if you could tell if you got all these vertices with a bump map, You can manipulate them. You can manipulate the geometry. All these vertices can be manipulated by the bump map and actually move. And that's the I forgot what the name they call it. Anything. Too much stuff in my head about this stuff. Really think about it, but like before you go and this displacement, and that and the word was sticking in my head. Like it comes in bump map is basically the same thing as displacement map. But some place you don't have to use it as a displacement map. You can still use it as surface information, which also tell it how to light is how to shade. You know the surface of a polygon, how to shade the surface. This face right here, how it needs to be shaded. But with all that said, so you got your individual polygons. So here ain't a polygon. I mean, so you see a lot of people when you see these sculpts, you see on top of the head, they got these big chunks of polygons together without individual strings. Everybody got like, it's sculpted in there like to give like kind of like a strand detail, but it's not individual strands going. It's not the same thing. This is actually chunks of geometry, and it's rendering it just like it's rendering a polygon. So the lighting's not going to be the same. The material's not going to be the same. So what they're doing with hair is actually what they call a spline. And it's basically your polygon. You got these vertices, and they're not called vertices anymore. They're called CVs. Well, I guess control vertices. I guess that's what CV stands for. Like so, you can control the spline. So you got lined up. You're in a line. It can be like this too, or like that too. But it's a spline, and it renders different. And they got, you got control points. They got levers where this has a lever there, it's a lever here, and the way you bend this articulates how how the spline acts between point A and point B. So you got two vertices, and both of them got a control point that has two controls on it. Yeah, you manipulate it. I can go ahead and do it. Pull it in, go bam. My teachers, they're just like the whole thing with the because like people don't want to watch like the hair with me. I'm like, dude, humans they got down. You really don't got to make a human anymore. So and then the hair systems, they got hair systems cover that stuff. But there's like if I'm a it's just a thing about it. I'm in edit mode, in object mode. I'm gonna add a curve, a Bezier curve. Take this and delete that off. Tab in the edit mode. After I select it, and now you got a spline with two controls. And depending on how I move the control, articulates the spline. And so it's like so it's got control basically. It's between the 2 points. It blends. It blends whatever whatever because there's a it blends the information to interpolates between the 2 points basically. So I move this way. It's getting more action and affecting more on this side as it does on this side because it has a different. So that's the interpolation between the two, like how they're being controlled and where positioned at on these TVs or whatever. It's still words you can convert with splines, but this is a hair. Basically, a hair, but down it has to take a material on it. It has to be able to render the spline and render that spline material and render it as a hair and render because they'll take it, then there's different sizes when it comes to how it's rendering. Underneath here is hair. Subdivisions, how many subdivisions? This is just one. These are two subdivisions, but you can break it down to where I could add more subdivisions, give me so the more subdivisions, if I add another subdivision here, it's gonna add another point that interpolate to, but it's also one, if you only had like this sticking out of a head, demonstrated so you can see, people can see and understand. Now I got this sticking out of the head. Now to get it to be a hair, and basically these are gonna be guides too for like how they have it set up and blended to do hair. This is basically be a guide here. And so the more polygons, the more subdivisions it has, the more control you have in between to give it, action or some. So if somebody has straight hair, yeah, it's great with just but hair is more complicated than that. It waves. It doesn't just go straight. It might go, sometimes waves going down. It might, do some sort of other thing while it's hanging down like that. So the more subdivisions you add to it, the more it's gonna have motion to it too. Also, because they just calculated in the animation. Other reason why processing and rendering takes time, especially in animation. You're not animating all these vertices. You're also animating all the vertices in the hair. So that's another reason why you see when somebody's going and they do hair, it's some this is the hairdo or something like that. On top of the hair is just this geometry shaped and molded but it's not it's gonna render like this unless you put like more details going and you're going or you putting lines and it's not this is with like you know you're telling it where to go. This hair is going up like this. Now you think about black people's hair. All you can do is pretty much put dots of information up here, and this is it's not rendering the inside what's underneath because that's rendering volume. That's two total different things. It's rendering surface. That's so it can only render the surface. So the hair, if you have a hair like that, says the sideburns or something like that, it goes to the back. That's what you're gonna get. You're not gonna go, it's not gonna be rendering inside of it, it's rendering the outside, which the topology was rendering. It's not gonna be rendering anything inside of it. And that's like I said, that's volume. That's volume, rendering it by volume. And you can't render here. Well, I mean, it's not processed. I know that you render here by volume yet, and I don't know if they do it. But I mean, because even then, it still have to have control points for that volume to attract to you, to know how to, and then styling it would be how would you style it? Then you have nothing physical to manipulate. You got a volume, you got air. So what would you have to guide all the hairs? So you're back to saying drawing board with the CVs and splines, and so that said with more detail. So you're gonna have to add more points, you have to subdivide it more, get the hair to do this, unless it's straight. And so that's the difference. That's the reason why black people hair, when it comes to black people hair, it's hard to like, it's not like a lot of textures. Like you can take a group of polygons, lay them on a head, clear this out. Group of polygons. If it's straight hair, you can take a group of polygons and lay them on top of the head, and then you got another group of polygons for the bangs and lay them right there. They got the part wherever the part is, where it's parted, and that could be all polygon information. Then you can lay a texture over it and just layer it a little bit to give it, give it a little bit of take the opacity down on the take the alpha and take it down a little bit on on one layer, or just the alpha just a little bit, just tad bit down, so it's like so the material slightly and then even this Evie's not read that in Evie still. No, it's just like I don't get it. I don't get it. There you go. Control the alpha to where the layers don't really you know have that much. It lets it has some see through to it. And if you build the layer of the hair right and you build the textures right, it'll look somewhat close to real hair. With doing it just with if you're doing it just with like that's less That's not a million polygons. It don't take millions of polygons to do that. It don't take millions of control vertices to do that, or thousands of control vertices to do that. This, the curly hair like that takes thousands. Now, if you got curly hair, big clumps of curly hair, you can take it and still do it because you can still layer texture on that polygon like that. You can still layer because the texture is once you lay out the UVs. Put this like this. It says, oh, that's not even good enough. I was doing it right first. No mind that. That's too long. Smell it. And you can still. This is good geometry. It still makes good geometry. It's not what they call destructive geometry. Like, because in the way sometimes a twist, like we're doing like what they call them cornrows. And then, right, so it's easy, that would take destructive geometry or some creative with. I mean, you can do it without destructive geometry. You can still make geometry that looks like that because you can make it go like this. And then if you texture it right, it'll look right from different angles, but it's still getting it's still a thing where they call it getting close up, and that's another thing about here. But like I said, this is good geometry. It's good UVs, and you can to draw a texture on it or to make texture or lay a texture out to go on top of the UVs, and you can still even though it's curved like this, you can still get the UV on the island to be a rectangle. Going left or right, either way you lay it out, you can still lay a hair texture on top of that UV on that UV shell and have it go around, but the actual geometry to go around and follow like that. But even though it's laid out like this, which is just you got your like you got U and V or U and V, depending on where you want to look at it. Depending on how, and then depending on how it's laid out with the V, U, instead of, because like you already got X and Y already taken. I think that's why they did that. I have no clue why, but like you just, because you only map in the surface area. It's not given depth. It's like you don't need a Z for it. There's no Z needed because it's not depth. You don't map in topology. That's like it's only the surface. So you're back to basically when you look at your X, and you look at your Y. You got X and Y, but it's going all the way and all around the model, and it's getting pulled and laid out. I can't think of the math formula that does that. Like there's like one math formula that you can take a sphere and map all the points so you can map it to a straight line. Like you take the circle, and even though it's a circle, you can map it to a straight line. Part of that shit goes to that. Part of that goes to that. I can't think of what it is off the top of my head right now. But that's basically the same thing as but it's good topology. It's easy. It's but it's laying all these. Now you got to worry about how many polygons it take to make this curl, and then you got to lay these curls and make them come out on the head at points and have to be able to have control. And that's like that took processing time and ability. Computers had to be able to do it. And you talk about every average day human having like a supercomputer back in the day to do something like that. And even now, like most computers come out now have enough processing power to do hair, like in Wonder. But it's still going. I mean, I got 1650 on this, and it's still that's another reason why I don't do hair because I got 1650 on this. I'm not really trying to spend my time on rendering hair. Like it's thousands of polygons or thousands of vertices added on to thousands of millions of vertices I already got just for the high poly model that I'm using so far. So like it's but other ways to do it. They make systems. There's a hair system. The hair system gets better. They got this hair system, but see, it doesn't transfer. The hair system doesn't transfer over to to some game engines. Like depending on what it is. Like they got metahumans and that stuff. Metahumans and Unreal that transfers over to Unreal Engine. So and then there's the thing that they got called LODs, which is basically you got to think of because that's how it's able to do it. When you get up close to something, like right up on it has this many polygons. It's like like you're 1 foot away with the LOD, stands for level of detail, and that's how many polygons it has. And that's like it makes it so level of you can think of LOD as level of importance. Like also just because of the fact that like if you're looking at something on a camera that close, you want to see detail. But when you're like 30 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet away, like say the Z, was that a backwards Z in my drawing? Yeah, I'm drawing Z right. Say you're at 0 on the Z axis, and you're now at 100 on the Z axis. Like 0Z and 100Z, it looks different. So LOD systems take it and make it so it looks the same. It's going to take that and break that down into 4 polygons at like 100. Basically, the thing. So as you get close, the polygon the polygon count builds on it, and that's where you see sometimes you see flickering in the distance when you move around. It's the LODs where you might see like it's like I mean it's gotten better over the years, so you don't notice it anymore. Like you don't notice like type of flickering going on in the distance. So and then by the time it gets to the jumble is and that's how they got Now what they're doing with the with the nanite, you can put these millions of polygons down on here and not have to worry about it because the computer processors are strong to put all these vertices in because now it's how nanite interprets that. As you get away from it, it breaks it down automatically. Like you'll see it, you go in Unreal and you put on the nanite visualization, and you'll go and you'll see in real time if you pan out on the camera or you dolly out. The kid think it's dolly. I believe dolly out. It pans left and right. Dolly in, dolly out, whatever it is. You're gonna see it start to build and make these little clumps of these polygons that it takes in I guess it groups a whole millions of polygons. You'll see these color patches of polygons. It'll calculate these color patches of polygons, and then they'll take it as you go out. You see these patches slowly grow together. Like these two patches might be together when they're back here. Maybe it's 4 or 5 patches, 6 patches of of, of clusters of polygons, and now it's going to like 2 when it's back on Z 0 Z 100. So it might which that's the thing you gotta think about with hair too, because hair straight up, you looking at the hair straight up and close, you see strands. If there's no system to make that break down going this way, then it's still processing this many strands this far away, and that's where the LOD comes in. LOD, we got what is the other thing? HLODs, and LODs. How so in which HLODs, we got an HLOD system. Like that's the what it's still taking, but it's taking more clumps of geometry and doing it by big clumps of geometry, like model wise. Like you got 5 6 models. You have a rendering at like some point. Like you may not be you know it's being pre-processed rendered or whatever, and then when it goes away, you're not looking at it. That whole group goes away, despite whatever. That's why you want to also think about that when you're talking about rendering and building models and building levels. You gotta still think about Pythagorean theorem. If I'm looking in perspective at this spot, like I'm right here in a room going out. So you got all these hairs get rendered on the main character, but like I said, you want everything when it's calling out. It's calling. Sometimes it's calling by camera, and then they got another calling system goes. They say if there's I got this wall comes out juts out here. What's out behind this wall, it's not going to be rendered because it's how it's calling out by the camera, and like it's only going to render the polygons that it sees. That's going to block until you get to that point where you need to see it again. Then it's going to pop it up there, pop the model there. So when you're building the levels, you got to think about your model size, these wall sizes, even when it's more built, when you got like we got landscapes. You're building on terrain. You got how big terrain patches are because it's going to render the whole terrain patch, and you're moving a character from point A on this terrain to point B. So any models you might have, on this might be a whole bunch of models. It's going to render with the LOD system and render with the calling system as you move through here, but it's always going to render terrain depending on how the terrain's set up, like the terrain system's made. And then it's going to even just grass, everything. It's not going to render the grass, but you still got the material. You still got to worry about the main material, and you have to worry about the main, like how many polygons this terrain patch is, and then when you move from before you get to this next terrain patch, is it's loading up. It's not going to be loading this terrain patch. That's the thing where they got now with Unreal. I haven't looked up a lot of stuff on Unity, but like it's on the terrain system in Unity to see how it really renders. But I really don't try to use terrain. I don't try to work with big open worlds. So I really don't care about using terrain too much. Only just for like stuff like if I'm using one terrain patch, and then I'm loading that asynchronously to get to the next terrain patch when it gets to this volume. So but they got a world partition in Unreal now that goes along with Nanite that like it renders this when you got the player's the center of this thing, and it's got like these square patches. You can change the size of these square patches and how much of the terrain it covers to determine what's being rendered. And also like it also there's like a predictability thing, like when you're going in a direction, what patch of geometry is going. If you're looking like this direction, it's not going to be rendering. If it's like you're flying, like you said, you're flying around, and that's the thing with the big demo about when you're flying around, it's not rendering this over here. If you're looking at the camera frustums going like this, it's only rendering the patches that needs to render past the calling up to the calling point because you got to a point the camera's going to call it out. Then they got the HLDs that like are always going to be there, but they're like they're way off in the distance, and they're going to change depending on how far you're away from it. But it's always going to be rendered. If it's an HLD, it's always going to be rendered depending on how far away from it is, and if the camera's looking at it, it's going to be rendered there, but it's not going to be fully detailed. Like it's not going to be like a 4K texture or 8K texture. It's not going to be like 1K texture way off in the distance, covering this, and it's chunking up this whole group of geometry, so it can still be there, so you can see far off in the distance and not notice anything. And as you get closer, it's going to start propagating until it gets to the real models actually there. So like that's and so you got to think about that when it comes to hair processing it, from distance, from zero Z to like ZX, you know, whatever ZX is gonna be could be 1 million miles. It ain't gonna be a million miles away technically. Like how far your actual human eye sees. So say it's 100 miles again. Because I don't think if you had a flat plane with no obstruction in between point A and point B, and then the curvature of the Earth, how far do you actually see off? If it was just like a sphere or something like that. So like You got to think about that, but and then that comes into calculating here, even though it may not seem like it, because like even far away, it might just be the head with like it might just be the head with some paint on it. It might not be there might not be no geometry there at all. Just the head with some paint, that far away, and then as you get closer up to it, it's gonna start stranding out and stranding out. But I mean, like I said, when you got like old school, you see a lot of things where you got look at somebody's hair, you see these square patches going one direction, and you got like these drapes going draping over the head in some spots, and then but it's still it's still you know polygons, but it's not strands actual hair, and then the texture's being laid over it, and that still is easier for it to break down as it gets further away. But I mean, that's where it goes to processing and rendering and how good game systems are. 'Cause it's got to be able to play in a game system. Like you got 20 characters on screen fighting, say something like that. Well, you got 20 characters with hair, and then you got 20 black characters with curly hair. You got 20, and then the more hair, the more points and process, more points and process. Because it keeps track of everything by vertices, physics calculated by how the vertices interact with each other. Like when something hits, the more polygons you have, more vertices you have on an object, the more physics reactions, because it's going to react at the vertices. All your actions going to be at the vertices. So I throw a ball and it hits here right in the middle of the square. The square is going to get pushed, and then it's going to go and do something like that with the vertex thing, and then it's going to interpolate from this vertices to this vertices, from this vertices to that vertices. So this might come down to a little bit on down the line of vertices that's connected to it. If you're looking at like a straight line, this is the ball coming hitting straight in there. If it was hitting directly at a vertices, the ball's hitting at a vertices, a vertex, it's gonna interpolate in between this vertex and this vertex. So this is gonna come down some, and it's like probably a perfect situation. It's going, and then it's interpolating on down the line. How it's going to manipulate those vertices and calculate physics and calculate calculate a collision, depending on whatever how you have this how you have this collision model set up, and if it's got like if it's a skin mesh or something like that that has like I forgot if it's like a physics object. I can't think of the names and stuff right now, but like so that's the other things you got to think about. Then you got to think about when, and it does go into that far where you can paint now. You paint the physics onto it. Like so, if like I had like this polygon, if I did have polygon hair where it draped, more of your action is going to be down here at the bottom versus that you get closer to the head. and so you have to paint that physics onto there to like. I guess it's red, a green. Again, usually it's green to red or red to green. I think green is more action, and red is no action. I can think of that. This is with cloth. The same thing as with cloth. And you're basically doing the same thing with hairs, the cloth. And so it used to be green down here. It's red as it approaches the top, and it's interpolating between these sets of vertices. That green, when you paint the green, and you paint the red, the more action, like there was wind to be acting on, or even motion. The more this down here would have more motion than up here would, at a degree. And so that's you can think about hair again, and you think about black hair, and you think about how the hair is going like this. You know, at close up, if you're looking at it close up, and every follicle, then say, oh, this follicle's got split in. And then you want to try to make it, and then you say level of detail, you get up close on somebody's head. It's in my head, because right now, if I was it's kind of like, cause I ain't got, I got receding hairline, and then I got thinning hair, so you got to think about that and those different nuances. As you get up close, is where this head you got strands of hair you handle with textures. You got this get handled with textures. You got texture just going on this. You can't just put a texture. You can't just you can paint the head and do this. That's basically what you had to do. At one point, you had to paint the head. Try to get a little bit better of a understanding of my face there. If you're looking at my head from the top view, right down. So like so you got clothes, you got all these, you got more hair to deal with, and then you're only like here, you're only dealing with surface, and it's easy to deal with, strands, and then you learn these two surfaces together. Versus now you're going and you're looking at with the black hair, you're looking at if it's short, you're looking at every individual hair. And that's like there's no telling, especially with these curves. You got CVs. They get it to bend and all that, because like this is how it's gonna look with just to get it to curve like that. That's four CVs basically, and if I add one here, it's gonna interpret. I can pull this out so I can have it curved. So, but that's basically the reason why human hair is hard to do, and it's not a you don't see a lot of, I mean, black human hair. You see a lot of bad things going on with black human hair, and they kind of make it. They try to do the best you can, because you also got to think about. Like I said, you got to think about programming. I mean, think about programming. You got to think about rendering. You got to think about processing that hair, and importance, level of importance. Is it really that important to have that hair look like that detail? But just putting out there just because somebody, some people, you know, don't know, and it makes it kind of hard. But thanks for checking me out.